Thank you for joining our third LinkedIn Live here at Juniper. It's the first in the UK and EMEA. vLabs and Biscuits, your new Evpn boost. Happy New Year to you all. I'm Oni Thomas from the marketing team here at Juniper, and I'm based in London, England. Now, wherever you're joining us from, we do hope you're keeping safe and well during these times, and I hope you've made yourself a decent cup of tea or coffee. I certainly have. Please do stay with us for the next 30 minutes or so, and during that time, we'll provide a live demo showing you how you can gain access to our on-demand lab environment for free. We will show you the Evpn offerings to give you that boost you might need to tackle any technical challenges, you may encounter this year. Now, we've had over 400 people register for the event, so a huge thank you, everyone, for your interest. Now, just a couple of announcements before I introduce you to our presenters. Towards the end of the live demo, we will post a link to a £10 tea or coffee card for anyone interested. Now, terms do apply. In addition to this, we will select a random winner from the people who fill out the form for the chance to win one Juniper certification voucher. Like I said, we'll post the link to that page towards the end of the demo. And without further ado, I would like to introduce my colleague, Lauren Malhoyt. Lauren joins us all the way from Indiana in the United States on the East Coast. How are you doing, Lauren?
I'm doing well, Ani. Thanks so much for the great introduction, and thank you all for being here. It's great to be in a Europe-appropriate time zone, at least if we can't travel right now. I did bring my tea. I have my trusty, there's no place like 127.0.0.1 mug for all of you network geeks out there. I personally am one myself, so I enjoy the funny mugs. It's something I can do just to keep myself entertained.
Fantastic. What are you drinking today? What sort of tea have you got?
I have some sort of mango, a subtle hint of mango tea. So that's all I had. I don't remember exactly what it was.
Exotic. Love it.
Yeah. Very exotic for us Americans. I don't have any cookies or biscuits, I'm sorry, today, but we do have Kieran Milne here with us. We can bring Kieran on. Kieran, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing better since I saw your mug. We didn't have that in rehearsal. I love it. That's great.
I wanted to surprise you all with it. So I thought if anything, it would get you, and hopefully the audience enjoys it too. I see you're going with a Juniper branded mug, which I very much appreciate as well.
Good enough, but not as good as yours, I have to say.
Well, let's get started in just a moment, but I do want to keep encouraging folks to write in the chat, write on LinkedIn, and we will answer your questions live. Whether we get to the demo or not, we'll make sure we get to your questions. But Kieran, you are the creator of vLabs. You know everything there is to know about it. So why don't we jump in with you?
Absolutely. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm located in Ottawa, Canada. So the snow falls where I'm located. And not a big tea drinker myself, but I rummaged around in the cupboard and came up with some Earl Grey for today. Seemed good enough and appropriate for the occasion. And so here we are. Let's look at some Juniper vLabs. And the question is always, of course, the number one question, what is Juniper vLabs? Well, it's really straightforward. vLabs is an online cloud-based platform, a lab platform or lab environment that lets you get access to a wide selection, actually, of Juniper products and solutions. It's on the page you're seeing here, located at vlabs.juniper.net, and we're going to log in just a moment and check it out. But you can get at it. It's free to access. You do need an account, and I'll show you where to sign up for that a little bit later. But you get your account, you log in right at the top of the page there, and you'll be on your way just as we are. So why don't we jump our way in here?
And Kieran, I imagine there's a lot of folks out there that maybe don't have access to their test labs, or maybe don't have the gear so that they can test some new capabilities, right? So there's lots of ways you can use vLabs, including setting for certifications as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. So a couple of great use cases, and you'll see this pretty quickly, is that's a great one. So several people, actually, lots of our members use it as a kind of a pre-production test environment. So maybe you don't have your own test lab or test environment in your own company. This is a great way to jump into some of our pre-built topologies, and you can test a particular feature or something of that nature and do it in this safe kind of sandbox type environment. So that's a great use case. You made a great reference to the next great use case, which is I'm studying for an exam, right? You took a class or you learned some material. Now you want to get hands-on to check and verify your knowledge and really get it locked in. Great chance to get onto our topologies and kind of get yourself, build your expertise, right? Get prepared for that exam, develop your experience, that kind of thing. And another great one we see is you're in the tech library, the Juniper tech library. You've come across some new feature you didn't know about before, and you just want to try out this thing you're reading about. So you've read it. Now you can come to vLabs and try it. So lots of great ways you can make use of vLabs for kind of your need or your purpose.
Awesome.
So as I said, we're on the front page, vlabs.juniper.net. On occasion, we have some lab maintenance kind of on a Friday evening kind of thing, and that's happening this Friday, just as we meet today. But not a complicated page. Right side here is a 30 or 60-second video, just a quick overview. What is Juniper vLabs? Kind of a quick view into the environment and gives you a taste of what's coming. A what's new section. So what's happening, the latest things we've updated and goings on there. So if you come back regularly, you can check the what's new section.
I know that's always changing. I know you're always adding new labs to it and updating other labs. So that's awesome to see.
Absolutely, yeah. So always new things being popped up there, whether it's a brand new topology. We're going to show you one of those today that's very new, or upgrading the operating system or the version of some product. And that's been happening as well. You can see HealthBot has been upgraded. In fact, it was just last week to version 3.2. It was released last week, and within a day or two, it became live on vLabs. So try and track as close as we can behind those kind of updates and releases. Now, I mentioned that you need an account, and so if you need an account, this is the spot you want to come down to. This spot, and we'll come back to this at the end and I'll remind you, but there's a link here for how to get signed up. So step by step to get yourself signed up. We make use of the main juniper.net user account system, so you can get yourself signed up. And with that account, I'll scroll back to the top and you can click the sign in button.
Now, Kieran, I assume that account is like £1 million or something, right? I don't know conversion rates. I'm not gonna lie. I'm an American.
Direct to us, right? That's we'll give our address at the end. It's no, free to sign up. That's a great point. So free to sign up, free to use this, and again, just give some the usual account registration type of information, the details you always provide for an account. And once you've got it in hand, you set your password and you are in, no cost at all. Now, you didn't see the page here that I just walked through that you will see when you do this, which is the sign-in page, the username password. It's simply because before we started the session here today, I logged in and was doing a couple of things, so I wasn't prompted again for my username and password. You will be, no big deal. Enter your credentials and you will find your way here onto what we call kind of the internal vLabs landing page. It's really a catalog or listing of all the topologies that are available. And I'm not going to spend too much time on these. That can be your task, but I do want to just point out some things as we go down the page. The first thing very much is the resources. Check out the how-to videos, the user guide, the FAQ. This will get you oriented with how to use vLabs and get yourself organized. There are some details in certain topologies where you have to enable certain types of things and access credentials and logins, things of that nature. So good set of how-to videos to get yourself oriented in vLabs, get the sandboxes up and running, that kind of thing, just making use of the environment. The first section is very simple, some standalone devices. You want to come in and try out an MX device or a VMX device in this case, since our topologies are all virtualized. You can spin up the single VMX and you'll be on your way. It's the real VMX product right there and ready for you. I'll scroll down a little further. Again, we won't spend much time on these, but just to show you, there's a routing section. These are pre-built topologies. So the diagrams that you see, for example, for VMXs, kind of cross-connected as a single area OSPF, area 0, that's what it will start up as. That's the default start position. And so on and so forth. OSPF, ISIS, some BGP, some segment routing. You get the idea. There's
all
a
switching
section. Oh, go ahead, Lauren.
I was just going to say all the favorite routing protocols you could ever ask for.
Yep, all familiar territory, I'm sure, to the folks joining. So VLANs and RSTP for switching. I should mention, by the way, that these are the way these things start up, but they don't have to stay that way. And now, to be clear, you can't change the physical orientation of the sandbox. You can't add 3 more devices, for example. So the architecture is fixed. but these are the live, real products, and the pre-configs come up in the way that we've been describing, but you can change those. So log into the devices, add a new feature, like we said earlier, and commit it and see what happens. Tear down the config and rebuild the setup the way you want it. All an option, completely customizable, and kind of build it the way you want it if you don't like the default way. Now we were talking about, you're here to talk some EVPN and VXLAN, so I want to pause on this sandbox of note. This is a pre-built sandbox with an IP fabric and EVPN VXLAN. I'm going to click the tile because this one's interesting to me. And in fact, it's not just one, but it's two. I'm going to click the graphic here so it'll pop up in a larger view. This is two fabrics side by side. I'm going to zoom in by clicking on this guy here. And if I can get the positioning just right, there we go. So I'll scroll down, and these are diagrams of the levels of the fabric, if you will, the underlay, the overlay, and the virtual networks configured on top. And the difference between these is that the left side is a centrally routed bridging or spine routed fabric. And so the inter-VXLAN or the inter-VNI routing happens at the spine layer. And there are details telling you about that. By contrast, the right side fabric is an edge routed architecture or a leaf routed architecture. And as you can see, the details about the IRB interfaces for inter-VNI routing are at the leaf layer. So once again, these are all pre-built, and it'll come up like this. You can use it as it is, you can explore your way around, you can break it and change it as you wish. You get the idea. So these more information pages are pretty useful because they give you, first of all, the diagram, and they also give you kind of a description down the left side of just some of the details of what's going on in this pre-built environment, what devices are being used, what interfaces are pre-configured, what protocols are running, if any, for your sandbox, some of the IP addressing schemes. So that kind of information just to set you up for these sandboxes.
So Kieran, let me jump in here real quick. We do have a question from the chat. Aaron asks, is any of it physical or is it all VSRX, VMX, VQFX? You get the idea.
Yeah, good question. So in this lab environment, it's all virtualized. So that may vary depending on your particular requirements. You know, if you're working at a company and you specifically need to get on a real MX or SRX or QFX, you know, if you truly need the physical boxes, then that'll be something to deal with your account team. But in so much as a VMX really is essentially the same product as an MX, except for some physically oriented fine details. You know, if you need to get on that equipment and use the Junos OS, that kind of thing, this is a perfectly acceptable alternate, I suppose. The VMX is a real product that is actually its own product you could buy and use in your environment. Same for the VSRX. The VQFX, which is what we use in these data center fabric environments. The VQFX, to be very clear, is not a full sold product. It's a lab environment type of representation. Now, it is pretty fully formed. Its stability isn't perfect like a full QFX, but again, that's because it's not a real product. It's a lab-oriented representation. So again, very solid, but those are some of the differences between our virtualized environments, which is vLabs, all virtualized, versus if you have a need for a physical box.
But at the same time, capable of doing EVPN VXLAN, which is awesome, right? Because I know a lot of folks are, they want some more confidence with EVPN VXLAN before they're putting it into production, right? Before you totally reconfigure your network and create this spine leaf topology like you're talking about. It's great to be able to play with that first and get some visibility. So I think that's great to see in there.
Absolutely, and that's the same functionality, right? That's the Junos OS functionality on these products, and so that functionality is right there. In fact, it's used to pre-build these topologies, right? And so absolutely right there and ready for you to check out and use for yourself. The last thing I want to point out on this particular architecture page is that this topology was built based on Juniper's validated architecture guide. So we have a team that builds these solutions and validates them and then documents them. And so there are links here on this page to the actual technical documentation for the kind of preferred recommended designs and architectures for EVPN VXLAN fabrics. So you can click through to these links and check them out in the tech library as you walk along through the tech library and the topologies themselves when you're logged in. So let me jump back and keep going down the list here. So that was the switching section. There's a security section, IPsec VPNs, NAT, that kind of thing. There's a couple of items on automation, if you like to try out JET or PyE for Junos. And then at the bottom here, this is our last section, a section of a collection of network management, telemetry, analytics type tools. So there's a variety of them here. And the one that we wanted to click into is Abstra DC Fabric Operations. So you may have heard that just recently Juniper announced its intent to acquire Abstra, who provides a really robust and strong fabric management solution. Where the previous topology was devices only, you can log on to the Junos devices. This one uses a controller, a fabric manager, to let you build the fabric using a really strong solution of automation, closed loop monitoring, a kind of that kind of type of a solution to get into a UI and build a fabric that way in an automated, intent-driven kind of way.
And Kieran, I just want to jump into there real quick. Yes, Abstra is a recent acquisition, but we were partners with them long before. So this solution's pretty tried and true. Is that right?
That's absolutely true. Yeah. So we've got some track record with them. And I should add at the end of the page on that is that, in fact, just yesterday, the full, legal acquisition elements closed. And so Abstra is fully incorporated or joined in with Juniper. We're thrilled to have the Abstra team join us. And this is now a full Juniper integrated solution. And it should be a really interesting 2021 as we continue to build in that way. It's really promising.
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry, we do have some questions rolling in from chat. So I know we're talking about data center at Abstra right now, but we do have a wireless question. And the question being, do we have any wireless currently in vLabs?
So unfortunately, no wireless. Once again, that virtualized versus physical situation. But what I can tell you is that this may not fully answer the question, but it might get you in the right direction. In so much as our wireless solutions are quite related to Mist and that whole solution and the management system that goes with it and so on and so forth, there's a free Mist trial online. The URL we can track down, or you can do a quick search yourself, the person asking, and you'll be able to get a free trial, get you onto the Mist platform, which itself is the platform that you manage those APs with. And so that might be something to check out.
Yeah, awesome. And I mean, just hint, a lot of times if you just join the Wireless Wednesday webinars, you might be able to get yourself a free AP.
Nicely done.
We do have some other questions. Any plans to add a packet generator within the vLabs environment?
Good question. So we've made a decision not to add a packet generator or the official Ixia Spirant type of things, but in some of our topologies, we've added endpoints, kind of servers hanging off the sides of the topology. And that's essentially to mimic, right? So vLabs isn't intended to provide scale testing, things of that nature, kind of high capacity traffic throughput. It's not that it couldn't, it's just not the way we've built our labs. But those endpoints let you certainly send traffic through the network to test with the security topologies, for example. When you're permitting or denying certain types of traffic, there are endpoints where you can send per port, per IP kind of thing, and mimic that kind of a testing. Maybe I'll open this one up carefully. If you are interested in the topology and it doesn't have endpoints, but you'd like them to have endpoints, you can send an email to vlabs@juniper.net, and we'll put it on the roadmap and try and add them in.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I guess on the heels of asking questions about packet generators, how about packet analysis? Can we add Wireshark or anything like that?
So that I'll say a likely no to, just for kind of licensing type purposes. That would be down a path that isn't immediately available. Once again, some of the topologies have devices in the mix where you could use the kind of Linux capabilities, but in terms of the particulars that you just asked, I'll probably steer away from that one.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, so we have an oldie but a goodie question, and thanks to Dean and Andre for asking those questions before, but can we paste configs from Notepad? And I think I know the answer, and it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, great question. So in fact, why don't I take that cue and I'll launch my way through here into the environment to help us out. So I'm on the Abstra DC Fabric Operations page. I could click the diagram and get it to pop open in a larger view in a separate tab, but I'm just going to scroll my way down here. And when you find something interesting, hit the launch button. What we're doing is we're moving from the front end web pages, like we were looking at, through to our back end lab environment. And here's our lab work environment. Now you can see the view is a little bit different, but if you check the diagram, if I go back up, it is the same environment, or sorry, the same look and feel, right? Just in a different workspace. So that's the way you can use the diagram with the lab environment here and get yourself going. Now this is the sandbox ready to start. It's not running at the moment, but the top right corner there is a reserve button. and you basically will click the reserve button. It will pop open and ask you if you want to start now or start at some scheduled future time, which is an option, and you'll just simply start it up and running. It takes a few minutes to get going, and so I cheated, and I have jumped ahead, and I have an active sandbox running of this. See in the top corner, it says active. And so just to get back to your question there, Lauren, on any VQFX device in this case, so the Junos device, you float your mouse over, you can choose SSH, and it pops open in a new tab. And so in this particular case, the VQFX is actually a two-step login. I'll provide you more details on this later. But what I'm going to do is I've launched myself onto the Linux server that hosts the VQFX. And now I've just logged in as a second step to the VQFX itself. Something the way we build our VQFXs in the vLabs here. That's just the way we've done it. And so this is the real VQFX. It's you can wander your way around and explore as any Junos device. So in terms of copying and pasting configs, a couple of options. First of all, Chrome browser actually supports copy and paste from somewhere like Notepad directly onto the UI here, right in the browser tab. Now, to be very clear, not all browsers support that. And so you'll have to kind of try for your case, and you'll find out pretty quickly it'll work or it won't, right? And so there is an alternate option. There is an alternate option, and that is to open up what we call direct access. Now, there's a procedure to do that in the how-to videos and the user guide, but basically what you can do is open up a hole in the firewall for your sandbox, because it's blocked and protected, to your own local machine. And once you've done that, then you can log into these devices using your own local tools like PuTTY or Secure CRT or whatever you're using on your own machine. And with that, of course, all of your copy-paste options open up like they always would, and you're really on your way. So for lots of copying and pasting, in fact, I recommend that version. It's a great option to get you moving the configs onto or off of the devices at the end of your session, and then you can really kind of go at it as you need to. So two options, depending on your needs.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point too, Kieran, right? Yeah, a familiar like PuTTY or Secure CRT is great for engineers that just want to use what they're used to using. But at the same time, yeah, you can't actually save configs within vLabs, but if you can just save the configs in Notepad, you're good to go, and then you can start a new session tomorrow or the next week, right?
That's exactly right. So you made a good point there, which is that vLab itself doesn't store its configs when your session ends. vLab sessions, by the way, run for 3 hours by default. When you're doing that startup setup details, you can extend it to as much as 6 hours if you like, or you can actually do that here in the UI. Right beside the active button, there's an icon here called extend. So if you haven't used all of the time, the maximum 6 hours, and you want to make use of it because you're not done yet, you can click the button and extend your time a little bit. So that's an option. But either way, once the session ends, the whole thing is going to tear down and destroy. It doesn't preserve in any way. So you will want to get your configs off of the devices if you want to keep them before that tear down happens, of course. But you made a good point there, Lauren, which is that there's no quotas, no maximums to using vLabs. So once your session ends, whenever it ends, you can spin up a next session right afterwards, once it's torn down and cleaned up. You can spin one up a few minutes later, or tomorrow, or the next day. You can keep doing that. There's no kind of weekly quota or monthly limits. That's not the way it works. It's open and on demand for your use on a session-by-session basis. So feel free to kind of keep coming back and reusing these as much as you feel like you want to.
Yeah, that's awesome. We do have another question from the chat. Swarav asks if there is a roadmap for Evo-based routers.
Good question. So I'd say that's still coming down the line. In broad terms, I can say that using these products and using Evo-based products is going to be kind of from an experience or a Junos CLI standpoint, going to be really similar, if not exactly the same. You won't notice much difference. There are some discussions and plannings about maybe something that's like a virtualized version for a lab purpose, much like the VQFX that we're using here as we look at the screen. I can say there's no immediate word to say on that at the moment. It's a planning roadmap kind of conversation. So possibilities of it coming, no firm statements for today.
All right, one more question, and folks, keep asking your questions. We have about 5 minutes left, so get them in while the getting is good. Chris, one of our Juniper ambassadors, actually asks that Control Shift also bring up a guacamole pop-up to copy and paste stuff in?
It does. So if I switch back to the CLI here, so that's a good point. Thanks, Chris, for queuing us up for that one. So on a browser that doesn't naturally support the copy paste, like I was saying before, you can do, I think it's an Alt-Control-Shift. Yep. Alt-Control-Shift in this browser-based SSH kind of interface, and you can paste content into the clipboard. It's kind of a 1, 2, 3-step activity. Check the user guide for how this is done. You can paste content in here, and then do your Alt-Control-Shift, it'll hide, and then you can right-click anywhere on the screen, and it pastes it. Similarly, you can drag and grab information here if you want to capture your configs, do your Alt-Control-Shift, and there it is. You can grab that, and you've got it for your Notepad or wherever you want it to go. So yeah, thanks, Chris, for the reminder there. Some options for if you want to move back and forth. As you can see, it's not the greatest option for big, long config dumps. Totally workable if you're happy with it, but then you may want to, at some point, you may want to get to that direct access type of solution.
Yeah, makes sense.
Right.
We do have another question from Roman. Are you planning to create more complex topologies for exam preparation specifically?
So we're always open to taking requests at vlabs.juniper.net. vLabs@juniper.net. I can tell you that we're always mindful in these virtualized environments of the load of the overall lab environment, right? So we try and provide a size that is reasonable for to reasonably try out the technology or the topology in question. We tend not to add more devices that essentially mimic the same thing. A good example of that is we have a 4-router single area OSPF setup. We have a 6-router multi-OSPF area setup. You could do 10 routers for that multi-area setup, but it's at some point it's just extra devices. And listen, I've studied for exams plenty over the years. I love the bigger setups. You can just start building a real full, thorough setup. I totally get the point. We need to mix and match though between those kind of capacity and scale versus the size of the topology. So happy to take requests, but that's kind of the caveat. We try and find some middle ground between a reasonable size versus getting out of hand.
Yeah, absolutely. And always having new stuff as well. So I'm sure it's a balancing act for you, Kieran.
That's absolutely true.
And the 100 people that report to you to create vLabs, right?
Oh, sure. Of course. Listen, I just want to finish this off because I'm watching the clock. We're still in our Abstra topology sandbox here. Again, these access details are in the guides that I'll point you to at the end here, and in the resources. But I simply wanted to show you, you float your mouse over the Abstra device there, and you select the appropriate option, and you launch yourself into the AOS UI. I logged into this a little bit before, so you'll get a login, but there are details, and I'll show you in just a minute. But here we are. So I won't dwell on what we're doing here just because we're up to time. The point here is for me to actually take you back to, let me find the right page. There we go. Is if we go all the way back to our kind of more information page for this sandbox, there are 2 key items you'll want to know about here. The first is there's a link for access instructions. So the way I was opening the CLI and logging in and opening the UI, there's a page here that you can find out the instructions to select the proper menu option and get yourself launched and loaded into these UIs. Not complicated, but that's where the information is. The other key item is this sandbox topology, those VQFXs are not configured as a fabric by default. Quite the opposite. The idea here is for you to get into the Abstra UI and build the fabric using the tool, the fabric management platform, using the intent-based networking kind of capabilities, and then hit the magic button and deploy the configs automatically out to the devices, and then you can see what happened as a result. So the how-to activity guide is at this link on the bottom here. You can click through and you'll see a fairly extensive kind of lab activity, walkthrough procedure to get you up and running and try this thing for yourself. So definitely want to try that out. So I'm just watching us come back to time here. I'm going to jump back to the front page and just remind folks to check out the resources. As soon as you log in, check out the resources. They'll get you oriented. They'll get you accessing things. They'll get that direct access if you want that local CLI access, all the things you need to learn to use vLabs at the top corner here. And I'll jump back to the front page and remind folks that if you don't have an account, simply scroll down, check out the link here. It'll give you walkthrough instructions to get yourself signed up for the account so you can log in.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kieran. It's awesome seeing the Abstra GUI. I love how clean it is, and it looks really great to use. I do want to remind everyone, go fill out the form at juniper.net/T. It's your chance to win the £10 gift card as well as maybe a free certification. We did have a few other questions about making your own topologies and things like that. I can tell you right now, we can't do that. We can't customize topologies, but for any roadmap suggestions, Kieran, will you give folks that email address one more time?
Sure thing. So the email, if you want to send us some notes, happy to exchange information, is vLabs@juniper.net.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Really enjoyed this. And again, please send your questions. Please send your feedback. We're happy to keep improving and keep chatting with you all. So, Ani, thank you. Kieran, thank you. And we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.